Hello, Susannah here from the Good Property Company. Um, so I'm in Brooklyn. I'm going to go for a run later on. Excuse my crazy hair. And actually, Arthur wanted me to do a bunch of videos while I was on holiday in New York. I bet you somebody comes out in this stoop. And there were kind of some of the questions we get asked. We get emailed a lot and we get Facebook messaged a lot, which is lovely. So if you want to have a chat, then do a little private Facebook message and we can have a good chat. So one of the questions we get asked is, how do I start being a landlord? Well, let me give you my experience, and hopefully you can translate that experience into your own development as a landlord. Because I remember thinking, oh my god, I'm going to be a landlord, and it was like super scary. Tenants, oh my goodness, I've heard all these horror stories. They trash the place, they run away with no money. It takes years to get rid of them. I just haven't had that experience as a landlord. So let me talk you through. My first property I bought for 79,000. It was a little a one bed flat just around the corner from my own house. I knew at the time it was worth 120, and it was. And I did it up. I spent £7,000 doing it up, and I bought it from a former housing association. And I remember being absolutely terrified, even though I knew that the location was a really good location. It was like a mile from city centre in Bristol. It was a terrifying prospect to actually allowing other people to take responsibility for being in that property, and then also having the responsibility of the mortgage and not being sure through experience, would a tenant actually pay? What if the horror stories were right? What if they didn't pay? I have a family, I have a day job, I didn't have a huge amount of extra income, so I could just about cover that second mortgage, but it was terrifying. It was very nerve-wracking. So a couple of things I did. Number one was I researched the tenant experience. That sounds a fancy way of saying I found a bunch of landlords, I looked at a bunch of adverts, and I also found a bunch of letting companies, and that allowed me to see who was professional, who wasn't professional. So you could say that was like competitor analysis, but that sounds too fancy for what I was doing. I was just scared and wanted to find out how people did this stuff. And there were a couple of companies that were actually very good and very professional, and it allowed me to see what paperwork they were using for tenants. So things like credit check, employer reference, national insurance number, ID. I mean, there's a lot more that you need to do now, but at the time, those were the main things they were using. And then I would ask to see a copy of their AST. I didn't even know what AST, Assured Short Hold Tenancy, meant at the time, because I'd never done it before, so why would I know? So that's the first thing I did, was to understand what a professional letting company did and what they expected and what kind of time frames. And then the second thing I did was I found a bunch of private landlords to understand the same thing, and found that generally, not always, they weren't as professional, and that as a private landlord, as a tenant, you prefer to go with a private landlord usually because it feels more human. But what I wanted to do was take the professional experience of the letting agency but also be a private landlord. And then the next thing I did was I joined an association. So there are a couple of associations, and I'm sure that they're as equally as good. I just happened to join the National Landlord Association, NLA.org, I think it is. Anyway, they are fantastic. So National Landlord Association, I took out like a 5-year membership. The next time my membership comes around, I'm definitely taking out a lifetime membership. And what I found is they had so many downloadable forms for me that it became branded, because I was a bit worried that tenants would think I was just little old me on my own, this nice lady, 5'2", and they would kind of take the mickey. But using the National Landlord Association branded forms, for example, when we took credit referencing, we actually used the NLA branded forms, and I ordered folders so that I could give all the information to the tenants in a folder. It was branded, it was professional, and it gave me branding when I didn't have any branding. I was just like, wah! A little bit. And then the other thing I thought was amazing with those guys is, well, first off, they do loads of videos, which I think is really good, and I'm sure the other organisation is just as good. And then the second thing they had was a legal helpline. Honestly, it was like it was my lifeline, because I was nervous. And what was amazing is it was staffed by people who knew the legalities but were also landlords, so they're quite sensible and quite practical. So test out what other people do, both kind of personal landlords and also professional letting companies, so that you can understand the rhythm, the flow, the requirements, and how other companies do it, and then decide what you liked for you as a business person being a landlord or landlady, and what you also appreciated as a tenant because you want to give great service, and then join a professional organisation. And then the other thing I did, we've never done an eviction ourselves. We do evict, and we're very clean and very clear about evictions, but I actually prefer to use, and we actually use Paul Champlina's company. We think they're excellent. Landlord Action, and I prefer, I mean, we could do evictions ourselves, we would likely not get it wrong, but I prefer to use Landlord Action because, again, they do it professionally, it's exactly what they specialise in, but somehow having their branding, and it's like really good branding, it allows the tenants to understand that, you know, this landlord is serious, not messing around. So those were the first steps. Then the second steps were to go visit some properties to see what I was up against competition wise, and oh my goodness, oh dear, let's be quite frank. Sometimes our landlord community needs to improve the quality of the letting provision. So stripy mattresses, anybody? You know, is that a sexy look that you as a tenant would want to place as your home? So it allowed me to understand that if we could style and just make our properties kind of retail, not wholesale, we'd probably do really well. And then the third thing I did was I kind of mapped out all the different processes. So very briefly, let's look at, and I'm not going to go into great detail because this is a video about how to start, but let's look at tenant advertising. So where do we advertise? Well, we like UPad, we like Spare Room and Easy Roommate at the moment. And then how do we get their numbers? We actually scrape their numbers and we text them and we call them. So we're very proactive. We're not just even reactive, because tenants who are looking for rooms will advertise themselves on Spare Room and Easy Roommate. So we'll call them and text them and say, hey guys, I saw you looking for a room. Then we've got tenant viewings, and we discovered a really interesting thing that, well, not interesting, annoying. About 20% of tenants who say they're going to turn up don't turn up. So we did two things, excuse me. See, it's hot, so I've got ice today. We send them a text to confirm where the viewing is because it makes their life easy, but we say, please confirm that you'll attend the viewing, and if you don't reply back, we won't attend the viewing. And so they reply back, great. But still, some of those guys still won't attend the viewing, so we also call them on the morning of the viewing, and that's just not to waste your time, because early on, if this is your first property, you're probably scrabbling like mad for time, and you don't want to be sat there twiddling your thumbs when a tenant doesn't turn up. And then we've got the post-tenant viewing, which is phone them and text them and say, hey guys, did you enjoy it? Excuse me. That is good. I'm going to go for a run off Brooklyn, all the piers soon, and see like the Manhattan skyline, so I need this water. And then we've got the tenant check-in, where we mapped out all the different pieces of documentation either we need to do or we want information on from the tenant. So we want their national insurance number, we want their employer reference. If we do need a guarantor, we want all of that kind of detail. We want to get their deposit paid. We want to insure the deposit. I don't let my guys move in until they've paid their rent and the deposit is insured. It's just like a no-no. So I won't have we have to have the tenants pay everything a week in advance so we can get all the admin done. Then we have the check-in process. Then we have tenant contacts. We have tenant payments, tenant late payments, tenant checkout, deposit protection, health and safety. So that's like gas, electricity, Legionella, fire risk assessment, boiler servicing, pat testing. I think that's it. Yeah, so there you go. So if you kind of map out all those processes, now it sounds terribly complicated. I promise you there's a lot to it, but just take your time, go steady, and identify all the processes, what you need for each of those processes, and then start. And of course you're going to refine, you're going to improve, but actually I found that tenants are super. I kind of reckon that, you know, there's 1% of tenants who, you know, you wouldn't like to have them in your properties. Well, you can have that choice. You can decide, okay, thank you very much. We've had our initial agreement. I'm not going to repeat that agreement. That's a valid choice for you to do. But most of our tenants, as long as we treat them well, they treat us well, we got along just fine. Oh, and inspections, sorry. We do inspections every 3 months. So I hope that's given you kind of a brief overview, but also how to start. Check out what other people do, check out the professional bodies that are there to support you, and then figure out your own legal paperwork. Work with a lawyer, obviously, but also some of these bodies give you fantastic forms and paperwork, and identify what things you're going to do and what things you're going to outsource. So we always outsource evictions. We do very few of them, and I've only ever taken one tenant to court, and I'm owed in my entire, and I have a very significant monthly rent roll, I'm only owed £602.50, and I've had like a bottle of wine chucked around in a property, I've had fleas, I've had bed bugs, but like nobody's actually wrecked a property. And do you know what? Oh yeah, sorry. There was one more thing. Trade contacts. You need like 7 plumbers. You need like 4 pest control people. You just think about all the things that could go wrong in a property, and make sure you've got like at least 5 of every single one of those people, so that when your tenant phones up and says, I've got bed bugs, which we had for the very first time, you're not panicking. You're like, it's Ian. I'll phone Ian now. And if it's not Ian, then it'll be John, then it'll be Sam, then it'll be Dave. And then, do you know what? You're kind of cushioned. You've got a good support team. You've got a good legal team. You've got a good professional association. You've seen what your competitors do. Be nice. Your tenants are going to be nice. You're going to give them a great location, a really nice place to live. Keep it up. You know, we have, tenant repairs. Sorry, I did another one. Our target is to have only 5 outstanding tenant repairs a month, which for the size of my portfolio is a good target, and Josh is achieving it. So I hope if you dissect this video, take lots of notes, you will know there are professional organisations to help you. Clearly, you need to make sure you've got a lawyer just in case. There are professional organisations to help you if you want to evict your tenants. We don't do that ourselves. We feel it's too legal, too technical. Whilst we can do it, I would rather the specialists do it, you know, but most of the stuff we do in-house, and then you just work through the process. Hope that's helpful. See you soon. I think I'm putting the run off.